I've said it before. I'll say it again. The national media is coming around on Auburn.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zach Blackerby. Thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first or second listen of the day. This is a happy hour edition of Locked On Auburn, wrapping up our week with the Jake Crain, little Crain Kick Friday this week. Of course, he of Crain and Company. We'll talk about media days and who could be representing Auburn in just a moment. But Jake, I've been saying it the last week or so that I think the national media is starting to come around to the Auburn Tigers in 2024. It's like folks finally sat down and started doing their season research. Maybe it's before media days. Maybe it's just because all the preseason magazines are coming out. I don't know. But it's like people finally sat down and said, oh, wait, Auburn doesn't have as hard of a schedule as they typically do. Oh, wait, Auburn did do a lot in the portal to address a lot of these issues. Oh, wait, Hugh Freeze is going to be over the offense this season. You're a member of the national media. What say you?
Well, man, I feel like, it seems like for at least, the past 3 to 4 months, and we cover everybody, but this is why, if you really want people to get into the nitty-gritty details of college football, it's why people watch your show, especially Auburn fans. Sure. And then, with our show, because we dive really deep into college football and try to project and look at the roster. But I felt like for the last 3 or 4 months, I've been over here saying the same thing, Zach, that you've been saying. Right. If you know what you're looking at with Auburn, then it's not a crazy thing to sit here and say, man, the floor may be 7-5. Honestly, when you look at the roster and the schedule ceiling, you can argue 9-3, 10-2. It's going to be tough with some of the road games. But sitting here, when you said, oh, yeah, it looks like Auburn's probably going to win 8 games, people would look at you, like you were the snuffleupagus. I felt like for the past 3 or 4 months, I was Tom Hanks on the island of Castaway, and every now and then I'd see a ship, and I'd start screaming at the ship. Like, hey, Auburn can win 8 games. Like, look at the schedule, look at the roster. And we've talked about the importance of what? Every game's important. But the luxury we have as fans and media members is that we can prognosticate down the road. You look at those first 5 games for Auburn. They're 5 games at home, right? Oklahoma's probably going to be your toughest, I would say. Then you look at Cal, Arkansas. They're all winnable. So the fact that people are now starting to come around on this is because we've gone from, oh, let's just use whatever we felt about the team last year to project this year to, wow, we actually did our research. This Auburn roster is not that bad. They seem to have a lot of momentum, and the schedule is decently light compared to some of the other ones. Not that it's ever easy for Auburn, but, this is just circling back to what we've been saying if you're really paying attention.
I think, though, Jake, even if you look at last year's Auburn football team, and the way they barely lost to Georgia, barely lost to Ole Miss, barely lost to Bama. The New Mexico State game was a disaster. Let's take that out. Hopefully that never happens again. Please, please, please. But to me, I think last year's performance, for the most part, with this year's schedule, I don't think it's crazy to think Auburn wins an extra game or 2 last year if they had this year's schedule.
Yeah, and again, I think getting Bama at Georgia at home, is obviously huge. We know what happens in Jordan-Hare, but like Zach, again, you're coming at it from a point of you watched every snap of every Auburn game last year. If you're somebody in the national media that didn't, you played Georgia tight at home, you played Bama tight at home, but they remember New Mexico State like that at best. Evens that out to 0, and at worst puts Auburn in a bad light, which in my opinion, going into this year, and I've said this before on this show, you never want to lose to New Mexico State or a group of 5 team. I feel like each head coach gets a hall pass early. We've seen this happen before. Hell, Nick Saban lost to La Monroe. I'm not saying Hugh Freeze is going to be Nick Saban, but that first year get a hall pass, but not in the national media really. So they go back to, Auburn lost to New Mexico State, which to me, Auburn is in a very rare spot that Auburn never really is in. And what do I mean by that? Auburn is the hunter. They're really not the hunted this year. Nobody is fearing Auburn whether it be the media, the coaches like Kirby and them, they understand, right? They get it. But outside of that, Auburn can kind of sneak up on people. Here's what I think is going to happen, Zach. And again, I wait till after fall camp. I got to see the injuries, but just my instinct is telling me, I think Auburn starts out 4-0. I think they start out 4-0. They dip into the.
It would almost be disappointing if they didn't start 4-0, right? I mean, a loss to Cal or Arkansas really throws things off.
Yeah, for sure. I'm not saying anything crazy here, but Auburn starts out 4-0, and all of a sudden they're ranked 21st, right? Then you start hearing, all right, hey, Auburn's schedule wasn't that great. They played all their games at home, but here comes Oklahoma. If you're an Auburn fan, you want Oklahoma to win every one of their games until they play Auburn, and really after that as well, unless they meet again. Because if you get a ranked Oklahoma and a ranked Auburn going into that 5th game, and Auburn beats them at home and goes to 5-0, now you're ranked in the top 15. You're back in the national spotlight. Hugh Freeze is turning Auburn around, and you're going to probably go get beat by Georgia, but that's okay because Georgia's going to be the number 1 team in the country, right? You're almost playing with house money on the road in that game, coming off a bye week. So again, what you'll see is Auburn won't get a ton of respect from the media still, even though they're coming around a little bit. But all of a sudden we get to the 5th game and ranked Oklahoma comes in to play ranked Auburn. That's going to be the moment where Auburn can really put itself back on a pedestal, and I think can give them a big push of momentum going into what is the hardest part of the schedule, which is the back half of it. So again, if you're not as tuned in as people like me and you are to Auburn, you're doing your research. You're like, wait, they brought in what wide receivers from the portal? They got the Penn State guy. They got the Georgia State guy. They got Rivaldo Fairweather coming back, Cam Coleman coming back. It just, again, now you're starting to see the research come to fruition. And people are like, hey, man, 8-4 would be a great year for Auburn. Then is a legit possibility. Well, thank you. Just finally the boat saw us on the
welcome to the show, the volleyball. Guys. Right. Wilson. Yeah. No, Oklahoma is so interesting to me because I think they're extremely overrated, Jake. They're replacing an entire offensive line, new quarterback, and it's just that typically doesn't work well. Typically, I'm sure there's been situations where it has, but that typically doesn't work well. And you talked about it, like you want Oklahoma to be undefeated when they come to Jordan-Hare Stadium in week 5. They host Tennessee in Norman the week before. It's going to be a hugely emotional, passionate game. It's their first SEC game. They get it at home. Props to the SEC for giving them that. If they win, they're on cloud 9, and I believe they're going to be looking at Texas, not Auburn. If they lose, I think all the pressure is on them because they've got a real shot to start 0-3 in conference play. And then they become the joke of the SEC after, 3 conference games. And I think that's a ton of pressure on Oklahoma. To me, I'm liking Auburn's chances against Oklahoma more and more as we get closer to the season.
Yeah, and look, I've talked to Oklahoma fans. I've talked to Parker Thune, who's really hooked in over there. The inside of the Oklahoma fan base, you're always going to have fans, it's short for fanatical, that think you're going to win every game. And that's great. You need that portion of the fan base. You need that Arkham Asylum of the fan base because that helps add to the mojo and to the craziness. But the people that know over at Oklahoma realize, hey, Texas is going in the SEC year 1 better than we are. They just are. It's the natural evolution and circumstance. Jackson Arnold, the new quarterback at Oklahoma, has got a little bit of experience. I think he's going to be a phenomenal player down the road, but that's going to be his first road SEC game in Jordan-Hare. The offensive line, and you brought this up, yeah, they're talented, but a lot of them are green, right? A lot of them aren't used to it, and communication up front on the offensive line, everybody knows this, is a lot different on the road than it is at home. And the mixture of a green quarterback and a green offensive line is as close to a death sentence as you're going to get going into the SEC. Not that it can never be overcome or there won't be moments. There will be. That's how talented Jackson is and Dion is outside and the guys that they have. But in aggregate, it's probably going to be tough. So, again, you go back to that Tennessee game. As an Auburn fan, I hope Oklahoma wins by 1,000. I hope they are on cloud 9. They think nobody can beat them. I hope the national media thinks they're the sexiest thing since Pamela Anderson ran on a beach in a swimsuit. All right, from an Auburn fan perspective, that's what you want. But as a football fan, that one's going to be a toss-up to me. That's going to be a toss-up with Nico coming in on the road.
I think Tennessee wins it, Jake.
They're going to be really good on defense. Like Tennessee's going to be really good on defense. But selfishly, you hope Oklahoma wins it, because if they don't, you brought it up. Not that you're not going to focus on Auburn. They'll be focused on Auburn, but the sense of urgency is at DEFCON 1 because there's a legitimate shot, as you brought up with their schedule, starting out 0-3 in the SEC. And now you just gave Brent Venables a 6-year extension, right? Or a 3-year extension on top of what he had before. And now you've really got to beat Texas, right? In the Red River. So it's the perfect storm for Auburn, in my opinion, if Oklahoma is undefeated, but it's pretty close to a perfect storm if they've got that one loss to Tennessee, because you still get them at home. So again, all these people that are making fun of Auburn right now, and Auburn, they haven't had a winning season the last 3 years, and that should never happen at Auburn. But at the end of the day, those will be the same people. I said this about the people that were like, "Oh, Brian Harsin, you were unfair to him. Let's go to Toomer's Corner and let's." Those will be the first people when Auburn beats Oklahoma to go 5-0 that are sitting out there saying, "Oh, it's freezing in here, man. It's 85 degrees outside, but it's freezing in here." So I'm not worried about that part of it. That's how it works. But again, I'm rooting for Oklahoma as an Auburn fan for the first 4 games of the season.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. So it does seem like the national media is coming around on these Auburn Tigers. As we record this Friday morning, who should be representing Auburn at SEC Media Days? We're very close. Very close. That's coming up right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, patience is what brings home championships and that winning trophy. It's also what keeps your ride or die alive. They've got everything with over 122 million parts for your number one car, truck, SUV, your daily driver. From superchargers to roof racks to exhaust kits to LED headlights, they've got it all. With eBay Motors, you're burning rubber and not cash with all the parts you need at the prices you want. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay guaranteed fit. Only available to U.S. customers. Jake, when you look at, who are the 3 guys Auburn should bring with Hugh Freeze or take with Hugh Freeze to SEC Media Days in Dallas, which I think is just going to be a week of pandering to Texas and Oklahoma, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there.
Which makes sense, though. Makes sense. I get it from a business standpoint. I get it.
Well, whatever. That's fine. It's been so much build up. Whatever. You got to think Peyton Thorne is one of them. To me, I think it's too big of a story if you don't bring Peyton Thorne, because it's like, oh, do you trust him? Do you trust him to represent your program? Because he's already a dynamic character throughout the SEC anyway. So I think it's Peyton Thorne. I think it's Eugene Asante. I think those 2 are locks. And the third one, I think there's an argument for Jeremiah Wright. I think there's an argument for Jalen McLeod. I think there's an argument for Keontae Scott. That third one is interesting.
Always bring an offensive lineman. Let me say it. Always bring one of them.
But I think it's Jeremiah Wright. If that's the case, I think it's Jeremiah.
That's who I'd lean on. You're exactly right about Peyton Thorne. I mean, you've got to bring the leader of the team there, because it sends off really more negative vibes if you don't than positive vibes if you do. So you got to take him. To me, I think Jeremiah Wright, being kind of an older guy on that offensive line, just to again show the importance of it. I think it's an ode to them as well, because it's not it's a dirty job up there, and there's not a lot of love that those guys get. And I think, the way that Auburn has struggled on the offensive line up until, Hugh Freeze was able to kind of rebuild it through the portal, is kind of an ode to them. I think it's the right thing to do. And then Eugene Asante, this is one of the best parts about Asante being a Swiss Army knife, that can rush the passer off the edge, that can drop into coverage, that can blitz from depth, is that you can say, yeah, look, we brought a D lineman too, if you want to classify that as well. He's obviously the leader of that defense. He's the most clutch player we've seen on that defense, and you want to reward those guys as well. So if it was me, I would bring as many linemen as I could and a quarterback, which technically I think is probably what Auburn's going to do. You don't want to bring Cam Coleman. You don't want to bring a freshman or anything like that. Let him earn his dues. Let him get in there and focus, on just doing his job year one. If it's not Jeremiah Wright, I wouldn't be opposed to bringing Connor Lew. I wouldn't be opposed to bringing the center, who is a young guy, but I'm hearing he's a leader in that.
You're going to bring him probably next year, though.
Yeah, but again, what's it?
Dylan Wade could be in that conversation.
He could, but again, if the young on the offensive line, the center is just such a unique position, right? Because so much goes into playing that you can get away with bringing a younger guy there, somebody that I think Connolly is going to be one of the best centers that's ever played at Auburn before it's said and done. I think he has that type of ability, but it's probably going to be Jeremiah Wright, I would guess, with Peyton and Eugene Asante, and that's the right move. And here's the thing about media days. You don't got to go in there and be Billy Bad Boy. You don't got to go in there and give nobody any ammunition. Only give your guys ammunition. That's it. You don't want to go over there and be like, oh, we're not afraid of Georgia. We're not afraid of Alabama. Hey, we're excited to play them. I'm excited to be at a place like Auburn where I get the chance to play against the best, right? Train at the best facilities, be around the best coaching staff. Don't give anybody any reason to turn Auburn into the hunted, right? Mm-hmm. Be the hunter, play your role. It's like politics, right? Just say the right things. Don't upset the apple cart or anything like that, and get back and get back on the grind to get Auburn where they rightfully should be.
Yeah. I do love the argument to take Connor Lew and just say, hey, he's so special. Let's throw out all the norms. Let's throw out all the standards because he's worth breaking some of these unwritten rules for. Mm-hmm. I just don't see them doing it. I just don't see them doing it.
Again, I would the betting odds wouldn't be great, but if I had to pick somebody outside of the old heads, which is obviously probably who they're going to take,
right?
Being young and that talented is one thing, but being young, that talented, and the center, right, is a totally different thing. So Hugh Freeze is gonna play it smart. I'm excited to get out there to Dallas. It is going to be the Texas and Oklahoma welcoming show, but it should be. That's great. You know what that doesn't do? That doesn't give anybody any ammunition against Auburn. It just builds up Texas and Oklahoma more. Auburn, it just needs to almost be like you weren't even there. And I know some
at the end of the week, it's like, I miss Freeze. Who did Auburn bring?
Yeah,
like that's the goal.
That's a huge win. You don't want to go over there and be like, Oklahoma, yeah, they suck. We can't wait to play in week 5. No, not that Auburn would do that. But there's always somebody that says something stupid, right? There's always that one guy every year that goes in there and says we felt disrespected, because their coach said this. So no, don't need that. Don't need that. We should be able to line up and make good decisions on the RPO. That's what we need to be able to do.
That's right. That's right. Jake, thank you so much for your time as always. How can people check out everything you've got going on?
Look, it's really easy. As usual, it's always fun to hop on you, my friend. Sure. We're getting closer. Crain and Company, YouTube, Apple Podcast, Spotify. It's Crain and Company. We're barreling toward football season, and we've been, Greg Louganis diving deep in it for a while now. So come check us out.
Yep. Hey, please like the video. Please subscribe, and we will see you Monday. This has been Locked On Auburn.